or maybe there's something that you hear from the speaker that sparks some kind of thought or something about your story that you're willing to share. It's important that I point out that we will be sharing that story with each other, possibly. And so I want to encourage you to be honest, and it's okay to delve deep, but also just know that it could be, you don't need to write your name on it or share who's sharing the story, but would want to hear from you, and I want you to know that it could be public at the end of the Lenten journey. And so we begin our Lenten worship service in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Let's sing together our opening hymn, Joyous Light of Heavenly Glory.
We continue by reading together the Lenten Litany. The story of God is living and active, and discerning the thoughts and intentions of the heart. For whatever was written for our instruction, that through endurance and through the encouragement of the Scriptures we might have hope. So faith comes from hearing, and hearing through the word of Christ. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God will stand forever. Lord, you are the author, and I am an empty piece of paper. You are the potter, I am the clay. You are the light of the world, and the darkness cannot overcome the light. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. We will continue by singing together, I Love to Tell the Story.
thankful to have Glenn Holteen here with us tonight. And Glenn is just one of the most active members in our church, has been for a long time, and we're going to get to hear a little bit about his story tonight. I think as a sign of just support and welcome, I think a round of applause is appropriate. Thank you, Glenn, for being here. So you've lived most of your life in this area. Tell us a little bit about those childhood years growing up over by Ada.
Well, I grew up on a farm in Ada, northeast of Ada, and we didn't have much money when I was growing up, but we had everything we needed, and I went to a country church, and we lived about 2 miles from our country church, St. John's Lutheran. We called it Green Meadow Lutheran because that was our township. But I was really close there, and it was a small church, but it was usually full every Sunday. There was a lot more farms back then. Sunday school was real active. My Sunday school teachers were all housewives, and I remember all of them. They were all special, and they truly taught you about faith. It was good.
Reverend Frevlo?
Yep.
Did I get it right?
Yep.
Because I've heard a lot of stories about the pastor that you had when you were a kid.
Yep, Reverend Drevlo. He was he was a meek and mild man, but very wise. And our little church it was kind of like a little farm that he farmed. And there was 15 acres, and he could grow corn when nobody else could grow corn. I don't know, he used holy water or something, you know. But he was, and then he had like 3 cows, and he sold milk. That was back in the cream can days, and he raised some pigs, and you know, he just fit in to the community, and he was just a faithful servant of God and a good teacher.
Yeah, yeah. So of course you grow up on the farm over in Ada, you become an adult, meet Barb, end up in Hillsboro. Tell us just a little bit about that and kind of into the adult years.
Well, I met my bride. She came over to Ada. She had some of the same girlfriends that I had, you know, that we met, you know, and this blonde from Hillsboro was there, and we sat and we talked way until the wee hours in the morning. And you know, we kind of started going out, and my mom says, "Hey, what's going on? You know, who are you seeing?" And I said, "I'm seeing a gal. She's from Hillsboro." "Oh, is that right?" She goes, and she goes, "Well, what's her name?" I said, "Barb Anderson." And then Mom goes, "What's her dad's name?" I said, "Herb." And Mom goes, "I graduated with him." and it about knocked me over. You know, they both went to school in Park River at the ag school, and she knew Bob Wood. She knew a lot of people over here, but it kind of, and then right away Barb goes, "Oh my God, we're related." Yeah. But you know, we met and went out for a couple of years and got married in this church. And this church ever since. And you know, we've had a great life together. Went through hard times. Right away after we were married, Barb became sick, and there was 5 years of tough times there. She was in the hospital sometimes for 4 weeks at a time, and after our twins were born, and Jenny was kind of a miracle because Barb was in the hospital and was very sick, and she's pregnant with Jenny, but everything worked out good. The good Lord watched out for us. And we got through those times, and we've had a good life. Barb's dad gave me the opportunity to come over here and farm, because I just had a small farm over in Ada, and he gave me the opportunity to come over here and work on a successful farm, and that was a blessing.
Yeah. You said that there were hard times along the way, and I want to ask you about a couple of those hard times specifically. There's been a few health scares and struggles along the way. Are you willing to tell us a little bit about when you had your heart attack and kind of the sequence of events that happened, time of the year, some of that?
Well, I've been a diabetic since I was 20 years old, and one of the side effects of that is heart disease. And I was farming and young and kind of going like crazy, you know. You thought you could take on the world, you know. And one day I was just going to get started combining soybeans. We were in the middle of beet harvest and we got shut down, and I was kind of wound up that day, and got the combine rolling, and I was out in the combine, and I just felt terrible, and I called, and somebody came out and picked me up, and I drove into town, and I went to the drugstore thinking, you know, I should have taken my pills, which I had run out of. And I was standing in the drugstore, and I sat in the blood pressure machine, and I looked at it, and it was like 240 over 150, you know, and I thought, holy smokes. And I was just feeling tough, and I was going to drive home and go lay down, and I got to the stop sign out here, and I thought, I'm going to drive up to the hospital, and I drove up there, and I barely walked in there, and I was having a heart attack, and next thing you know, I was hauled down to Fargo, and I was all dirty and everything, but they hauled me down to Fargo and put 2 stents in, and right away I was just feeling good again. You know, it just happened so quick. But I was in the hospital then for, I think, 5 days. And in the meantime, the whole community got together, and the day I came home from the hospital, there was 20 combines combining soybeans, and like 40, 50 trucks out there. More trucks than I had beans. And it was such a humbling experience to see that. And it just, it was just so hard. It's hard to believe to see it. It was pretty emotional. And I remember, everybody was there. People shut down their operations to come and do mine, and in the morning, or in the afternoon, and I felt guilty, But I remember Francis Kritzberger told me, he said, it was better for us to help you. It gave people satisfaction to be able to help, and it was just hard to comprehend.
Yeah.
You really felt, I'd lived in this community for 25 years, not quite, and to have that kind of support, you really felt this is home.
Yeah. Speaking of home, part of your story and one of the challenges was something that we seem to see on national news or in a different state, but tragedy hit our own community a few years ago. And if we could go to that next slide, please. This is the tornado as it's coming towards your house, and then this next slide, and a couple of these slides would be Glenn and Barb's home that got destroyed by the tornado. And I'll give a quick account of how I got involved that day. It was a Saturday, and we had just finished a wedding. And the best man came to me after the ceremony and said, "My phone is telling me that there's a tornado." He was from out of state. I said, "This is North Dakota. There's warnings about weather all the time. It's going to be fine." Not long after that, the sirens started going off. I still downplayed how serious it was until that sky turned black and I saw the funnel. And as it started, it ended. It happened fast. And a few minutes later, my phone rings, and it's Glenn and Barb, and I'll turn it over to Glenn in just a minute to tell his story. But they were out west and said, "I think our house just got hit by a tornado. We can't get a hold of our kids yet. Can you drive out and check on it and check on Charlie, our dog?" Of course I will. And so I went north on 81, and as I was still on 81, I could look over and see what had happened. And I pulled into the driveway, found Charlie and the dog, and then called Glenn and Barb back. And I'm on the phone, and Glenn says, does it look bad?" And I looked at that, and I looked at the shop that is laying on its side. "And what do you say?" I said, "Yeah, Glenn, it looks bad." And a few minutes later, Chrissy pulled in, get a hold of Jen and Brandon. He's coming from Fargo, and Chrissy takes the dog, and takes you several hours to get back, and then I'll turn it over to you if that's okay, Glenn, just to comment in any way that you want about that day, about the tornado, or the days to come. I guess whatever you'd like to say about this experience.
Well, we were out visiting my daughter out in Watford City, and we saw the tornado warnings we were watching the NDSU Bison game, and they said the tornado was sighted by Cummings. Well, right away, I thought about Chrissy, because she lives over by Cummings, and I called her, and she says, yeah, we're in the basement right now. And the funnel missed their place, and then it went across, and then it hit Norman and Marlene Oy's place. Took a lot of trees down, then it cut across country over to Taft and hit the elevator, and then it hit our house, and we were gone, you know, and Jamie Reed called me too, and he asked if Barb was in the house, because our car was sitting in front of the house. And I said, no, she's sitting right with me. And he goes, oh, good. And we knew that things were kind of bad then, and after Joe called and everything. And there's so many things about that day that was such a blessing. We hadn't planned on really heading out west to see Katie, but all at once we said, oh, let's go out west and see her. So we took off, and Jenny and Chrissy were going to can tomatoes at our house. And they were going to get together at our house at 6 o'clock in the evening. I think the tornado hit right around 6 or 5 after 6. And anyhow, at 5 o'clock, Jenny called Chrissy and says, I can't do tomatoes today. We have to, I have house cleaning I want to get caught up on. And so they didn't go can tomatoes. If they would have, I would have had probably 7 grandkids running around the yard out there when the tornado hit. So God was watching out for us. You know, some people say that God let you get hit by the tornado. No, he didn't. But he protected us. He truly did. And we were blessed by that. You know, the rest of the stuff can be replaced. But our lives were saved. Because it would have been terrible if we would have been home. I know it would have.
I remember one time when I was in college, I heard somebody refer to someone who had walked into the room that had been a person of faith. And this other person said, sometimes when you're around somebody, you can just tell that they've had a lifelong journey of walking with the Lord. And Glenn, I would say this of you, that being with you, and I'm with you all the time, he comes to every Bible study, and in my 12 years, I've added this up, and it would be over 1,000 Bible studies that Glenn and I have had together. I've gotten to know him pretty good through all of